Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and you're very welcome to this week's edition of DriveThru Sports Weekly. Another busy week's action to look back on, and a small bit, I suppose you could say, to look forward to, even though it slightly has gone a bit pear-shaped since the latest round of Meath Martin telling us what we can and can't do on last Monday night. But the only place I can plausibly start this week is with Gaelic games. Now, on the bare face of it, as I wrote in a piece over the weekend, a cynic or realist or whatever one might want to call it would say that the 10-year wait for me to beat Dublin at senior level still goes on, and that they were ultimately fairly well beaten on Saturday night, but as with any Meath Dublin game, I think the bare facts of it only tell half the story. Now, I know from the reaction to my own piece on Saturday night, Sunday morning, that in some quarters at least, the reaction was, oh, well, sure, Dublin never got out of first gear, or they never did this or that or the other. But while there undoubtedly is an element of truth in that, I think to focus solely on that part of the occasion in attempting to do a review thereof would completely shortchange the Meath team on this occasion. Bear in mind that when last they clashed in a competitive match, Meath scored a sum total of 4 points. Now, I said at the time, and I will say again, that the tally they accumulated on that day last June, I think it was, of 2019. It doesn't actually seem like it was that long ago, but sure, the world is such a strange and mixed up place now compared to what it was. Nothing sort of seems as it is or as it should be, but it's worth bearing in mind that when these teams met in June of 2019, Meath managed the sum total of 4 points. Now, even saying that in itself doesn't go anywhere near telling the full story, for the simple reason that if you recall that the score at half time on that particular day was 4 points to 2 to Dublin, Meath actually had enough of the ball in the first half that day to, at the very least, have been up level with Jim Gavin's team as it was then, or indeed in front of them, and naturally enough, the same as with any good team, and to call this Dublin team good would appear to be one of the great understatements of sporting vernacular in a long time. So it was obvious, unfortunately, that when that time in 2019 when Meath happened, made their competitive nature and partially efficient use of the ball to count where it matters most on the scoreboard, that it was going to come back and bite them in the backside, and boy did it. Now, to get back to Saturday night's game in Parnell Park, yes, it was a completely different scenario. Yes, both teams would have changed fairly significantly in the time from one game to the other, but I will say that Dublin had a fair amount of their recognised big hitters, if one wanted to call them that, on duty last Saturday evening, and whereas Meath, I think they said in commentary on Air Sport on Saturday evening that the Meath team most recently showed a total of 8 changes from that Leinster final defeat to Saturday night. Now, I'll be honest, it probably would be fair to say that Dublin never really looked like losing the game, but that was mostly down, in my opinion anyway, to the fact that Meath were unfortunate or wasteful, or a combination of the two, I suppose you would say, with the couple of gilt-edged goal chances that presented themselves on Saturday night at times when, if one of them had been taken, even it may have left a very different complexion on things altogether. Now, at this point in time, I suppose it should be pointed out, although most people will know this anyway, but Meath, of course, had already been relegated before the game last Saturday, and I think it was also fairly safe to say that Dublin's chances of making progress to the final, if there was going to be a final, which strangely now there's not, but had there been a final, I think Dublin may well have not ended up in it anyway. But the one thing I will say this, and I said this to people both on Saturday morning before the game and on Saturday night after, when the predictable retort of, oh, Dublin never got out of first gear and all this sort of blather came out. Look, there's no game or no contest between Meath and Dublin or representatives thereof that means nothing. As I said to somebody on Saturday night after the match, even if it was a ploughing match between representatives of the two counties, there would be a competitive edge to it. Now, there would always be a tremendous respect between the two counties, which has endured for as long as I've been around looking at football, and you would hope always would, but there is certainly no such thing as games that don't mean anything, or where one team would you know, take it easy on the other. It just goes against every valve of instinct that people from either side would have. So getting back to Sardis game, like, I mean, I would have absolutely no doubt when Dublin were left in a position where Dean Rock was able to slot home a very fortuitous goal, which left them 1-4 to a point in front at that stage. The instinct of this great Dublin team, or any Dublin team, or any good team from anywhere, would be to, when you have your opponent down, make sure to stay down. But in fairness to this Meath team, and to their immense credit indeed, they showed commendable heart and spirit and belief in themselves and in what they were doing to work themselves back into contention by half time, when they only trailed by 10 points to 6, I think, or what was it, 110 to 10 at half time. And you know, it may well have, could and possibly should have been even better for me at that stage, because Central Stirling's Cathal Hickey was very unlucky, I feel, not to have rattled Stephen Cluxton's onion bag just on the blow of half time. And indeed, that was only the first of a couple of goal chances which were spurned by the men in green and gold, and especially at times when, had they gone in, it almost certainly would have altered the outcome of the game overall. But look, as a very famous man once said on television not all that long ago, if me aunt was kitted out differently, she'd be me uncle. But even though in the finish Meath were beaten, and right, they still haven't picked up a point in Division 1 of the league. They are already relegated, and you know, you can think whatever you like about how Dublin set up and approached the game. I would certainly be of the opinion that there is absolutely no Dublin team that would go out at half pacing in the Meath team, no more than the same would happen the other way round. But and it's for that reason that I think Meath can take tremendous heart out of their performance on the night. I think at a most basic level, you know, to kick 19 points against Dublin at any time is no mean achievement. And what's more, 19 points would beat nearly any other team in the country any day of the week that that they've kicked that they were able to kick 19 points. Shows the shooting ability that they have in the team, up to and including wing back Brian Conlon, coming up the field and kicking a point. Cornerback Owen Harkin from Dunsany, who after a very shaky start, I felt grew into the game well and asserted himself more as the game went on. Looked like a chap who will, please God, have lots to contribute going forward, because look, whether one wants to sustainably compete at a given level, or if you're among the Dublins and Kerrys of this world, regardless of what level you're at, the way the game has gone now, you absolutely need strength and depth to have a panel with a level of sustainability in it that can go on a bit of a run in a given competition. I am not saying Meath are in the same parish as some other counties in that regard, but they are most certainly starting to build that way. As I'm sure some of you will know, and I actually had to remind myself of this fact before beginning this evening's broadcast, because it's that long since there was a game played in the competition. I nearly forgot that Meath were in fact already out of the under 20 competition, but there's no doubt that they have the you would hope that there would be some young talent coming through from the likes of those teams. I mean, already on the Meath team that played Dublin last Saturday night, we saw the likes of Jason Scully from Oldcastle and Jordan Morris from Nobber, and lads like that who had come through the under 20s and are starting now to get the opportunity to make an impact with the senior side, and to even entertain ideas of making an impact at senior level. You simply have to have what would you say, a conveyor belt of talent like that coming through. I mean, you look, it seems so weird now with everything that's going on. You nearly have to stop and think, but you look at Tipperary, of course, won the All Ireland senior title last year, and the manner in which they did it would suggest to an observer that they could very well have had a very decent chance of holding on to the Liam McCarthy Cup, and may still well do if and when the senior championship does go ahead, because they of course also had a very talented under 21 team last year, or under 20 as it is now, sorry, and as the evidence produced earlier in the week, which I also wrote about a couple of days back, would suggest that this year is no different in that they absolutely seem to have an abundance of young talent coming through at under 20 level again. So, you know, it underlines. Now I know the hurling picture is slightly different to the football, as with respect, while there might be a perception, and it's not a perception because it is true that there aren't very many counties who can claim realistic aspirations of winning the Sam Maguire Cup. While in hurling, the number with an honest and genuine chance of lifting the Liam McCarthy Cup is even smaller. So the fact that Tipperary look to have a very gifted under 20 team on the evidence of their display against Clare on Monday night would suggest that they are certainly going to be a major player in the senior for a good few years yet. Of course, speaking of underage progress and promise and all such related things, there can be no doubting that as much as the performance by the senior side on Saturday night would have been a boon for the spirits of football people in the county, even more so in that regard would have been the victory of our minors, which is of course now under 17, over Dublin in Park Talton last Saturday afternoon. Now, even if it's only by a point, anytime you beat Dublin in anything, it surely has to be regarded as progress, no matter what level it is or what competition it's in. So not only to see the lads win, but to see them winning with such authority and such aplomb, if you want to call it that, was absolutely wonderful to see, and reaffirms my long-held belief that there is a bright future for Meath football in the offing, because thankfully what was definitely a case of DI being taken off the ball with regard to underage structures and both competition structures and team layout, and that seems to have been rectified. Come on in. And then you're alright. And indeed, the best evidence one could need or indeed have at your disposal to demonstrate the fact that progress has been made at putting underage football in the county back at some sort of level, at least near where it should be, can be best displayed, I think, by the fact that we have won that Leinster under 17 championship twice in either the last 3 or last 4 years. Now I know it won the first year they won the under 17 it was actually a pilot competition. I know Dunboyne's Liam Byrne captained the team from midfield, but there was that year a Leinster minor proper, if one wants to call it that year as well, before the minor competitions were restructured, whereby it is now an under 17 rather than an under 18, and of course Meath won a second one them, I think, in 2018, if I'm right. So things are looking up, and I was just in preparation for doing this piece. I just happened to go through some of my fairly vast archives of statistics and scores and that sort of thing, and it just dawned on me that the the Meath under 16 teams of the last couple of years had in fact won the Jerry Riley Memorial Cup, and that tournament, which of course commemorates a former Oldcastle player who tragically lost his life over 3 decades ago now. But that under 16 inter-county tournament has always served as a good training ground or breeding ground, or whatever way one might describe it, for the county minor teams of at least 1 year or maybe 2 years thereafter. So it was on the cards really that Meath were going to have a fairly useful minor combination this year. And of course, another thing which I feel is highly important, but sometimes not in a malicious way, but with the general scheme of things, can sometimes get overlooked, is the fact that there now seems to be a bit of continuity about the situation when it comes to team management setups being left together and allowed to proceed on with the bunch of players that they have in fact brought through. Now, as far as I can recall, John McCarthy, who is of course over the minors this year, had them as under 16s in recent years, so it's only right that he and his management team were allowed to progress with the bunch of lads. And judging by the display of football they put up against Dublin last week, which to the great credit of the Meath County Board through their Meath GATV initiative, I was able to watch before I very much at the last minute renewed my Air Sports subscription, so I was able to watch the Meath Dublin senior game on Saturday evening as well. But that's getting away from the point. Having been able to watch the minor game on Saturday afternoon, there's absolutely no doubt that that there definitely is the potential for that particular bunch of players both as a collective and individually to go on much further. I picked out the likes of Owen Frayne and Aaron Murphy, and I think it's Sean Emmanuel now. I could be doing the young man a disservice, but he absolutely certainly looked a lad bursting with potential who one would hope in time, along with some of his teammates, would kick on and maybe take me to a higher level, at a higher level, if you know what I mean. But of course, the main reason for my wanting to discuss their exploits, apart from the fact that obviously they won, my reason for mentioning the Meath Miners in particular, apart from the very obvious reason of wanting to document and I suppose analyse their wonderful performance against Dublin last week, the other reason that they of course had to be mentioned was that due to what I consider to be an absolutely asinine idea by the GAA, the minor and under 20 competitions have now been, inverted commas, paused until further notice. Now, why in God's name they decided to postpone the minor and under 20 and still allow the senior to go ahead on a lot of levels makes absolutely no sense, except for the fact that one would not need Stephen Hawking's IQ to realise that in terms of the senior, of course, there's television money and main sponsor money and all these things that have to come into consideration, whereas now I know, to be fair, Electric Ireland are of course title sponsors of the minor and Airgrid of the under 20, but to me it just makes absolutely no sense to do away with two lots of inter-county action, not to mention the club activity, which I think is an absolute bloody disgrace, that yet again the clubs were thrown to the wolves in preference to as preference was given to the end of things that will make certain people's pockets heavier. But you know, I think if surely it had to be a case of one in, all in. Like, if you're going to let inter-county activity go ahead at senior level, surely the minor and under 20 should have been entitled to similar status and treatment, rather than being just thrown to the wind like a piece of chaff in the middle of the harvest. You know, like, I mean, where is the fairness if you look at it? The All-Ireland under-20 football in particular, which was to be played tomorrow, Saturday, I think, they were down to the final in that. Now, why they couldn't just proceed and play one more game behind closed doors. I honestly do not know. I mean, what, for example, is the difference between the Dublin under 20 and Galway under 20s going out and playing, say, tomorrow, Saturday, if it had went ahead, as compared to the Dublin seniors going out, which incidentally, now that I think of it, was actually they are actually playing Galway as well, funny enough. So I mean, why make the distinction between one lot and the other? I honestly do not know. The only possible logical explanation I can come to, and to me it's not logical, but I suppose it's the one that would be used for to get themselves out of another sticky situation. It will probably be said that minor and under 20 players are at greater risk because of schools and colleges being open. Now, for one thing, and I've wrote this extensively in the last week or so, and I was going to say I'd stand by it, but I'll sit by it as long as I have a pulse in me, because I firmly believe there was absolutely no need to reopen the schools, and that it cannot be coincidence, and anyone that thinks it is kidding themselves, that the minute the schools open, the number of COVID cases explodes through the roof. Now, that's one side of it. If you look at as regards going up to the under 20, the vast majority, I would have felt, of the players playing in that would be in third level education at this stage, and as I know from my own nephew and two nieces, the third levels, while they are technically open, all lectures and assignments and that are being done online from home as well. So therefore, surely the risk to other people is surely reduced in that fact. So again, I just think it's absolutely baffling in the case of the under 20 football in particular to say that there's only one game left in the competition and to draw stumps on it the week before the final, when the same two counties senior teams are playing it over the weekend, makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. But to go back to the case of the Meath miners just before wrapping up on that thing, I really, really hope that this cessation of their competition won't go on for too long, for the simple reason that that was a very, very polished performance by a talented looking Meath team last Saturday, and you would hope that they will be able to take to the field as a unit once again in the near future, because, and I know this goes for any team, but if it goes weeks or months before they're able to play again, if they're ever able to play again and by that I mean in this year's competition, if it goes weeks or months or into next year or whatever it is, uh, any bit of momentum or rhythm or whatever they may have had will be dried up, and that to me at least would be a great shame, because the performance them young lads produced last Saturday, which is, it'll be a week ago tomorrow. It's Friday night as I'm recording this here now, and they're just getting ready to go down to the start for the last race in Dundalk. But you know, it would be a great shame if these lads don't get the chance to go on in their championship, because the performance they put up last Saturday against Dublin oozed potential, and certainly the more of that we see coming through from a Meath GA perspective, the better. Now, to move on to horse racing and let my blood pressure cool down a little bit before it explodes, thinking of all that. It has been, I'm delighted to say, another great week for the racing fraternity in Dunboyne, because following on from the two victories of Lustown Baba last week, in the space of a few days of each other, both at Naas. No, it was the Curragh twice indeed. Curragh twice indeed on the Sunday, and then the following Thursday. So, of course, that gave the village, and I suppose in particular the lads in the back road syndicate connected to their horse, a mighty lift. And I am not just talking in terms of my pocket, even though it did benefit greatly from the two occasions in particular. But thankfully it's fantastic to be able to say that this week we had another skip full of local racing success to comment on, but in a strange sort of way, and this is by no means to denigrate the achievements of Lustown Baba or you know, the significance of it to the lads involved with the horse, particularly owner breeder Finn Sheedy, but on what I think was it yesterday or was it Wednesday? I think it was yesterday. There was an even more unique sort of occurrence in that we had two locally owned winners at two different tracks, some 90 something miles apart, with the added bonus that in one case we of course had a local man riding the winner. So first of all came in a handicap hurdle in Thurles. Yes, it was Thurles. Yes, the jump meeting. Tricky Tricks, 7 and 8, I don't know, she's 7 or 8 year old mare, owned by local retired butcher Pat Mackin, trained by Dermot McLaughlin and ridden by a very talented 7-pound claimer in Danny Hand. second win of her career on the rules at Thurles. As I say, she had won a race back in August in Downpatrick under Conor Maxwell and finished second in a follow up to that. So she has been in consistently good form at the moment, and you know there's no doubt, as I wrote in the piece, which hopefully some of you seen last evening, there's no doubt that the switch to front running tactics has definitely suited the daughter of Mahler, and I would be of the opinion, and I've no evidence or information to back this up, just my own judgment from watching the horse run, which I have done for quite a while now. I would be firmly of the belief that definitely the little bit of cut in the ground in Tipperary yesterday did her no harm, because she's a mare that jumps adequately, very adequately well over hurdles, is well capable of jumping a fence as well, having won point to point, and you know, she jumps, she stays well, but I suppose, and again, this is meant as no disrespect to Pat or Dermot or anyone connected to the horse, she just wouldn't strike me as the quickest, and whereby stamina would be absolutely more her forte, and there can be no doubt that she was definitely seen to best effect in recent times when those on board were, whether it was Conor Maxwell or PJ O'Hanlon or Danny Hand, as it was the other day, when they made plenty of use of her, she'd stay and she'd stay and she'd stay, and you know, it definitely seems to have brought about an upturn in her personal fortunes, and speaking of personal, on a personal level, I would be absolutely delighted for winning owner Pat Mackin. Pat's been a long time involved in the game as an owner and breeder, and I know he was very actively involved in the Ward Union Hunt for a long time as well, and you know, for somebody like that's been in the game such a long time, and indeed was and is, I'm sure, a very successful breeder, and in actual fact sold a lot of good stock that he bred, the likes of Prince of Leisure and Prince of Pleasure, which were owned by the also local Home and Dry Syndicate, and formerly trained by David Broad initially, before transferring to Matt Smith. And Pat also bred a very useful staying chaser in England called Step Out, I think it is, trained by Marcus Bradstock, who generally always turns up in those long distance handicap chases, and you know, again, actually, like, even though Pat didn't actually breed tricky tricks, but some of the progeny he bred himself seemed to have a fondness for the soft ground as well. So, you know, it's great to see somebody like that getting his day in the sun, as it was at the flat meeting in Navan on the same day. Great to see the Mulvaney's Bar Syndicate getting their steeds, well, one of their steeds back into the winner's enclosure yet again, when Silver Class exploited what would have to be said was a very workable rating on the flat. I think he was only rated 51, I think. Now, I will admit it's only in the last year or so I've become anyway accustomed to working out these ratings and what they mean or don't mean. But he got in off a very low rating, which was a great piece of training by Tony Martin. Now, this is a very good horse who has proven himself more than capable of holding his own over hurdles, over fences, and on the evidence of the other day at Navan, now also on the flat as well. You know, and what the big boon, I think, this time, and I'd say I would speak for a lot of the both the lads that own him and just ordinary racing fans or supporters or whatever one wants to call it from the area. The big thing about the most recent success and what gave it an absolutely wonderful extra layer of local buzz to it was the fact that on this occasion his victory in Navan was done under the steering of our very own double derby winning jockey Pádraig Beggy. Now, as I said in the piece I wrote the other evening after the race, it was Pádraig's actually first time to ride the horse, and after making plenty of use of Silver Class, actually I will hold my hand up and say that I was sort of expecting him to get swallowed up when he met the rising ground turning into the straight in Navan, but to the horse's immense credit and the man on his back's astuteness, they kept at it and put their head down and dug out the result, and it was absolutely wonderful for the lads. Now, folks, as I'm sure many of you know at this stage, it does take me a few days to put these the DriveThru Sports weekly programs together. So no, you are not seeing things. I am wearing a different jumper compared to what I was wearing in the preceding clip. Do not adjust your sets. Just, I think the last bit I was mentioning was about the Mulvaney's Bar Syndicate and Silver Class winning for them in the middle of last week under Pádraig Beggy. Well, as it happened out, while I was actually recording that clip, their other horse, Drakensberg, was actually running in Dundalk and ran a fine race under Jamie Heffernan to finish third over a trip at a mile and two, which I would consider to be well short of the German bred optimum distance. So I'd be very interested to see what Tony Martin will do now, whether he will keep him on the go over the winter in Dundalk, or whether he will hang him up, so to speak, and go for something in the spring with him. The horse is only 6 rising 7 at the turn of the year, as is Silver Class. So you would hope from the lads' perspective that they should have plenty of fun with the two of them for the foreseeable future, at least. Just because it's ran a couple of days, I suppose I can be forgiven a little bit for reversing in this broadcast back to Gaelic games for a moment, because we are now on Sunday evening at 9:45, believe it or not. I didn't realise it was that, because there was that much sport on the television today, which I will admit is a great position for myself to be in, that once there's plenty of sport on the telly to keep me keep the mind occupied and give me the opportunity to produce plenty of content, as much as it's a heartbreaker not being able to be actually in attendance at some, but it's still better than having nothing at all to while away what is, after all, the winter time now, especially with the evening clock, especially with the clocks after changing rather, and the evening shortening up. So I will get on to mention the couple of championship games that were on the telly in a moment, but first of all I must reverse up to the culmination of the National Leagues, and I suppose this is a double-edged sword, because as I mentioned last week, and as I've written about fairly extensively on the site during the week, from a material point of view, of course, today's game against Monaghan had no real significance for me, simply because unfortunately they were already relegated before they took to the field in Clonus, and having, as for the game itself today, having fallen behind earlier on to Micheál Bannigan goal, it appeared at one stage in the first half, with Conor McManus pulling the strings in attack for Monaghan, which is hardly any great surprise. It appeared that Bandy McEnany was going to get one up on his former employers, and indeed going to do so with quite a bit to spare, when the Farney County led by 175 points approaching half time, but a couple of late scores from, and very good quality scores indeed, from Oldcastle's Jason Scully and our own Ronan Jones here from Dunboyne. Left them, of course, only 3 behind at half time, and to be fair to each and every one of the Meath lads, for large portions of the second half, they did actually dominate the game. With, and I am not just saying this because he's my own clubman, but Ronan was particularly outstanding in the middle of the field in the second half, and as was Brian Menton, but there's absolutely no doubt that as regards the top of the plaudit list today, it has to be Jordan Morris from Nobber, who, for a chap that only came on as a sub in the last 2 games, he made enough of an impression against Dublin last week to suggest that along with the score he got, indeed he may have got more than one at this point in time, I can't remember, but I know he was in hard luck with his shooting on a couple of occasions in the Parnell Park encounter, and indeed, well, although they were beaten by Dublin, as I probably mentioned last week, the fact that they did kick 19 points against the two shades of blue gave an indication of the potency and potential that's there in attack for Andy McEntee's team, and it was great to see today that some of that was actually built upon and delivered upon, principally in the guise of Morris, who, after replacing the usually hugely influential Killian O'Sullivan very early on, stamped his potential and authority and class all over the game, finishing with a personal tally of 7 points. It looked, if there was one drawback in the performance, it did look at one stage as if another malfunction around the kick out was going to cost the Meath lads dearly, as if there's any one man in Ireland you do not want to give a one-on-one ball in front of a goalkeeper to, it is more than likely going to be Conor McManus, and he duly did what he duly does in these situations, and at that stage again looked to have put the home team well clear, but inspired by Jones and Donald Keoghan and Cathal Hickey and Brian Menton, and indeed some of the substitutes that come on, Meath hung in there and dug out the draw that their performance, not only today but over the course of the Division 1 campaign, thoroughly deserved, and it was only right and proper and fitting that it was Jordan Morris at the end of the move to kick a magnificent point with his left foot to guarantee Meath the point. Now, yes, they were relegated, but I think there's much reason to be optimistic going forward with the championship only a couple of weeks away. Firstly, and perhaps most fundamentally importantly, that from a team point of view that um, you would hope that the last couple of performances would have imbued the lads with the desired shot of confidence they'd be entitled to take out of the two games, even though they did lose to Dublin. But there's absolutely no shame in that, and teams with higher profiles than this Meath group will suffer similar fate and have done. So I wouldn't really be reading too much into that. But today undoubtedly showed something of, if you want to call it, Meath football of old. From to be in a position like that. I think I looked now. Maybe I've watched the game twice or three times already, and I think I looked at it with 6 minutes to go, and from 6 minutes to go in normal time until the time the game finished, which in total was about 10 minutes actually, or my apologies folks, I just have a very sore gum at the moment, and I'm trying everything in my power to keep the pain out of it. But anyway, from the time, as I say, I looked at the clock with about 6 minutes of normal time to go, so it was about 10 minutes in total, and Meath were 5 points behind, and well, this is stating the obvious, isn't it? They kicked the 5 points in that time to bring themselves back to parity. So I mean, hopefully, as I say, even though they were relegated, you would hope, and it surely will be the case, that playing in Division 1 will stand to them as a group in terms of experience, and even though Division 2 has a fairly hot look to it for next year, with the likes of Mayo gone down into it, Cork back up into it, you would still like to think that it would be well within Meath's grasp to have a right rattle at getting back up out of it. But in the meantime, I've no doubt that the principal focus now will be the championship in this strangest of years. Whereas after the first 5 rounds of the league and before the things were put on ice, owing to the lockdown and all that, things in the county were probably rightly and understandably a little bit downbeat after losing the first 5 rounds. I think even though they did lose to Dublin last week, and right, they didn't win today, but they got something out of it, and the character and the makeup of the performance, you would hope, would leave them in a fairly hopeful and confident position going forward into the championship now in a couple of weeks' time. Now, personally speaking, the one thing I always look for out of a league campaign, now obviously look, nobody would like the idea of getting relegated or that, and of course it would have been better if that didn't happen. But the one thing I always look to take from a league campaign is that, well, I suppose you could call it two things or call it one thing rolled into another. Firstly, of course, that you would have a fairly settled team and have a fairly good idea of your first choice 15 going into the first round of the championship. But also, I always think it's highly important in a league campaign that, if at all possible, that you try and unearth some new talent to infuse into the setup. And I think whether by accident or design, I think towards the back end of the league, Meath have certainly achieved that in the guise of Owen Harkin from Dunsany and Jordan Morris and Colin Hickey from Seneschalstown, and it was great to see the like of Jason Scully, who has looked very, very promising on Meath teams at other levels, getting a shot at the big time. And even today there, to see the like of Jack O'Connor from Curraha and Matt Costello from Dunshaughlin coming in and doing their bit, so there is talent coming through. And regardless of where the championship journey ends up for this year, I would hope that people would see that there is the nucleus of a decent team coming together there now. And hopefully, if things can be held together at underage, I do feel desperately sorry for John McCarthy and the Meath Miners, because I think any day you beat a Dublin team in anything, it has to be regarded as progress. And to see them beat Dublin, not only beat them, but beat them the way they did, was a fairly good indicator that this Meath minor team was a serious amount of potential about it. And you would just hope that, however it may come about, that that they would get the chance to play out their minor championship and really get a chance to show their wares, because having beaten Dublin, you would like to think that a provincial title wouldn't be beyond the bounds of possibility, and you would just hope them lads get the chance to go for that, because you can see, like, I would be the first to admit, and maybe I talk about it too much, but Meath's record as regards actually winning things at underage until the last 3 or 4 years had gotten into an awful bad place. But when you see, even off teams that maybe didn't have luck with them, I'm thinking of, I can't remember if it was a minor or an under 20 team, lost to Kildare one night a couple of years ago when Jason Scully actually hit the crossbar with a penalty. And even from teams that may not have had the luck that they deserved along the way, were still managing to unearth new lads and promising lads off them. And as long as you have that, I think you always give yourself a chance of giving things the right go and as I say with these particular minor bunch, if they're lucky enough to be able to play out their campaign, you would like to think that there will be tangible reward for them at the end of it, and that not only that, but more importantly, I suppose that some of them will go on and perhaps represent the county at the highest level in the not too distant future. Now, I know after talking about Silver Class and Drakensberg and that, I did say I was going back to Gaelic football to talk about the Meath game today and the performance of Gerard Morris in particular. But I almost forgot. I will actually have to go back to horse racing again because I couldn't forgive myself if I didn't throw in a mention of the continuing sparkling form of Noel Meath's horses, who have been absolutely cleaning up over Johnson on the flat in the last couple of, all season really, but before and after the lockdown, which is of course the finish of one season and into the next. I just had a look on the irishracing.com statistics page, where I happen to hang out quite a bit, and I just noticed that he is on the 25 winner mark over jumps for what has been a truncated restart to the National Hunt season already. I think he's around something similar on the flat for the year. Now, I won't ramble on for too long. I may put together a list of National Hunt horses to follow for the season in the coming days, if I can just get my head around it. I know this time last year I neither had the physical or emotional strength to go about doing it, because at that stage we had suffered one bereavement in the family. Me Uncle Jem, and of course poor Uncle Joe died then on the 15th of November, so my head was absolutely totally all over the place. This year I would hope to be in a slightly better position, although that might seem a little bit ironic with all the COVID malarkey that's going on at the moment, but I would hope maybe in the next week or 10 days to try and get me brain on it and put a list of horses together worth following. Now, if I do, there's absolutely no doubt that high up on said list will be Lieutenant Command, trained by Noel. Now, this horse was a very, very impressive winner of a bumper in Limerick over last Christmas on absolutely bottomless ground, and was so impressive in fact that in the spring before the lockdown, Noel actually pitched him into a fairly high grade novice hurdle in Meath, where he ran with considerable aplomb to, in fact, I'm not sure now if it was Naas or Leopardstown, but he ran with considerable aplomb to finish a very respectable third. So while he was a very comfortable winner of a maiden hurdle in Galway today, it would have to be said that it was only a case of him doing more or less what I would have expected him to do. But it's good to see my old judgment is not too bad, and was vindicated with the way he come out and won today, and he's one I'd be very much looking forward to following over the months and, please God, years ahead. The same would go for Beacon Edge, who was again a very impressive winner, and I know from listening to Noel anytime he's been interviewed about the horse, just how much is actually thought of the animal in Tuva, and presumably by the owners Jigginstown House stud as well. Finally on horse racing for this week. I cannot let it go either without mentioning Jim Bulger's exceptional achievement in winning the Futurity Stakes, which to those of us of a certain vintage or who were brought up and received their racing education with veterans of the sport, it'll always be known as the Racing Post Trophy at Doncaster yesterday, courtesy of 12-1 shot McSweeney. Now, I would know, having met Jim on a couple of occasions, that he is a bit of a history buff, and when it comes to the naming of his horses, this fact very often comes into play, and I don't think even he could have worked it to such perfection that the winner yesterday, who, to be honest, only had modest enough form, winning 2 races in the Curragh before yesterday, but I don't think even Jim could write a script whereby he would land a Group 1 the day before the 100th anniversary of the death of the man after whom he was called, Terence McSweeney, Corkman and Irish politician and patriot and poet and playwright. But Jim Bulger, what a remarkable man. Jim Bulger was born in the same year as my mother, and I'm not about to say what year that was, but there's a fairly round figure coming into it very shortly, let's say. And to see the man still churning out winners at this stage of his career is an absolute credit to him, as it is to the likes of Kevin Prendergast, who indeed is still doing it as well. But as any of you that would have seen the piece I wrote last night about Jim's great victory yesterday will know, the remarkable thing about Jim Bulger is that the vast majority of all the big winners he has had throughout his career as a trainer were bred by himself and or his brother Paddy. And suffice to say, they would appear to have another good one on their hands to go to war with in the classics next season, but that'll keep himself and a few other people very well known to me chewing the fat over the winter, as they say, and something hopefully, please God, depending on what way the world is, to look forward to next spring and summer, please God. Finally, for this week, I think, or certainly for this edition, I may try and get another edition out, maybe later in the week if I can, depending on what's going on, because I don't like letting it run slack, because number one, it's not fair to you, our viewers and listeners and supporters who have been so kind and so generous to us in your support, both on the website and the YouTube channel in recent months, and I cannot underline to you how very much appreciated that all is. But just to finish up for now, I will just say a quick word about the rugby. A good, probably a very good performance by Ireland, in all fairness to them yesterday. Any day you clock up 50 points in an international match, I suppose you'd have to be happy enough. Possibly you wouldn't want to read too much into it for a few reasons. One, Italy, with the greatest respect to them, they've never really made any discernible progress from the time they have entered the Six Nations. But then secondly, there's the point that, and I suppose this goes for all the teams, that it was their first game back as a unit within 7 months, or for 7 months rather, and they would be bound, I'm sure, to come on for it. Whether that will be good enough to go to Paris and get the result they would need remains to be seen, because as with any team performance, there was good and bad involved in it. Absolutely, there's no doubt about what's the word? The highlight of the good was undoubtedly seeing Leinster's Hugo Keenan go over for 2 tries on his debut. Will Connors, also of Leinster, performed very well in the second row, as did actually, I don't know now, was he second row or back row, but he performed exceptionally well, as did Caelan Doris. So it's great to see these new lads breaking into the setup, because no matter, as I was saying about the Meath in the Gaelic football earlier on, no matter what sport you're in, you need a bit of strength and depth coming through. Wouldn't have been entirely convinced about the Irish defence. Italy did get through them a little bit easier now than what you'd be hoping. But look, you've got to take these things at face value, and it's great that going into next week, into the game against France, that they have something still to play for, because every week that sport can give me anyway, and I'm sure there are many more like me, something with which to while the time away, keep us entertained, and in my case, keep supplying material with which to work. It's a bonus, especially for the year that's in it. So I hope I've ever covered for this week. There were a few other things I was going to mention, but we can leave them. I might do another show later in the week, or we might hold them over until next week. But that'll do us for now. Thank you all for your patience and your ongoing support, and I will talk to you all soon, please God.